Jenn Karson, who's standing behind me, is a lecturer at the UVM School of the Arts, the director of the University of Vermont's Fab Lab, and the founder of UVM's Art and Artificial Intelligence Research Group, as well as my co-organizer of this symposium. I met Jenn about a dozen years ago as a vibrant part of the Vermont Makers Group, which she founded, and and she's been a key driver of Burlington's art and technology community ever since. Jenn Karson.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hello. It's really nice to be here. I've been able to talk about this project a couple of times out of state, but it really is a Vermont project, so I'm excited to be talking with all of you today. So one of the themes that I'm gonna pick up a little bit from what Natalie was talking about earlier this morning, and with a focus on artist-made data sets and how engaging of a process that has been for me in terms of even having something where you're creating thousands and thousands of an idea and then being able to really stay with that idea. So we have a lot of apprehension about AI, as we should. And so I am going to sort of ask us to sort of pivot that argument a little bit, or that concern away, and really think about how there are reasons to be concerned, there are reasons to be thinking about things. This is a New York Times story that was last fall about an AI-generated artwork where this person who entered it and won a prize, and it was really controversial. But I'm sort of more interested about what happens when artists get into AI. And through the University of Vermont, I was literally invited to be a part of the machine learning community there and have access to the Vermont Advanced Computing Center. And it was a generous invitation that went out to the arts and the humanities, as you usually have people more from STEM working in this space and using it as a tool. And in this space, with all the welcoming, they were also confronted with questions of like, well, why are you here? What do you want to do? That's a strange question. Things like that. But I really came away from this being like, we need people from the artists and the humanities in these spaces, because they literally are spaces where things are happening and evolving. And so one of my conclusions of that, well, here's the thing. So let me pause this. You're hearing this? Okay. So I think we were probably the first, so I have the UVM Art and AI Research Group, and I think we were probably the first group that was working in there who asked them what it sounded like. And what you just heard is what it sounds like. And this is what it looks like. So in terms of that sound, can anyone deduce what you were hearing? Fans, right. Fans that keep the computers cool enough so they can run. So it's not even the sound of the computers. And so right away that was like, wow, what does that mean for the environment? And here were some of the other questions that we started to ask. So what does it sound like? What does it look like? Who has influenced this space? Who has coded this space? Who benefits from this space? What are people doing there? And how is this technology creating meaning? So we essentially realized, I mean, we didn't go in knowing what kinds of questions we were going to ask. It was sort of a full-blown, free-form exploration during COVID. And realized we were actually doing this kind of ethnographic study of what it meant to be in the space and what was happening there. There's the sound again. Nice. And so it was this unveiling, right? And there were so many layers of complexity to what this place was. So I'm going to give you some of what we learned, but also at the same time let you know who were in this space. So at this point, we've had nearly 20 students go through the group, but this was an early group. This is still during COVID times, and this was how we would meet, through our little pod, our little research pod, all tapping into the VAC, but also with each other. So we were actually even building community with each other through this project while we were working on it. And, we also couldn't have done this without certain elements of funding, and the funding was also very supportive. We didn't really need that much money for what we were doing, but this is sort of a breakdown of the different kinds of funding that we've gotten. We've been part of some NSF grants. We've gotten small grants from the university. We've gotten even little, like, tiny funded projects, and so that I could have, which felt important to me, I could have artists and computer science all being funded, undergraduates paid while they were working on this work. And we had some internships too for credit. And here's an example of one of the first sort of our drawings that came out of it is an exploration of the space. I don't expect you to like understand or like even be able to read that small font, but it was like, again, like, so who is this space? Who makes this space? Who funds this space? How is the university involved? And just really addressing at that point what was a kind of privilege of being in the space. So the first work that we did was with what we ended up calling the Athena dataset. And through the Athena dataset, this was learning both how to work with GANs, image GANs, but also with genetic algorithms. In some cases, running the genetic algorithm to help bolster our dataset. And the first exhibition that we had, how to show the work, and doing just different things, working with prints, that was an example of that. But we also did things where everyone in the group was working with the same data set, but getting very different results. And those different results were based on the curation also of the people in the group who were doing it. So everything, the line, let's see, on my left, so yeah, your left, is that first row is from the original data set, but then everything else you're seeing are sort of the favorites of, at that point, 7 different people in the group. So we were really exploring this idea of authorship too, which was important to us. And so if we're working with these kinds of AI, where does our authorship as artists begin and where does it end? And where can we, and I think even in sort of the sense of authorship, what I was talking about too is like all the different people who are involved. Like how much of this is really a collaborative project, and where is an individual artist's voice coming into play? So these were questions that we had that we were asking all the way through. And here are just some images from the first exhibition that we did up on campus, in terms of working also with this idea of being in a digital space, but how do we bring it back into a material space? And then maybe even back and forth with that. Because that was also another thing that was interesting to us in terms of how these two spaces, how we navigate through them. A very highly digital, complex space, and then actually the physical world that we're all a part of. And so this diagram, I actually had a lot. Once I made this, I felt like, okay, now I know what we're doing. But it was, because we really were like playing, it was just this, it was like being in like a never-ending story as we went through it, and finding, or a labyrinth or something where you're just finding all these different ways to investigate. So this was our diagram, a very unscientific diagram, but sort of playing with that idea of diagram, and it was obviously playing off of the idea of a controller and how we were moving through that space and things that we were thinking about. Where is how the human thought and the machine thought come together? This idea of the life cycle of work. We had questions about if the work that was what the GANs were generating, were these ruins or were they creations, right? Where was the most integrity in the work? Was it what we put into it, or was it what came out of it? Just very interesting. Were we creating things, or were we creating, or were we destroying? And through all this, it really started to change. I didn't realize it at the time, but so we're looking through thousands and thousands of images that are being generated, and not to mention how complicated that even gets just to organize them on your computer. But it was just like this constant barrage of like iteration and new and stuff, and at a rapid pace. And so so what started to happen to me is I started to see the world differently, the physical world differently. And there could be if there was a subplot to this, I would say it's going to be how artificial intelligence cured my plant blindness. And so plant blindness is a thing. And it's basically getting to the thing of just really taking plants for granted in our world and how we sort of see them and they're around, but we're not necessarily giving them all the credit they deserve and the importance that they have in our lives. And playing with some philosophy coming right out of Donna Haraway, if anyone knows her, but thinking about how the tool that measures leaves a mark on what it is measuring, but also on the observer. So if you think about thinking through a microscope at something, that actually that act of looking through the microscope is leaving an impression on the viewer, but it's also leaving an impression in how we interpret what we're looking at through that microscope. And this is what I started to experience through AI. So how many people here had the spongy moth caterpillar outbreak in their neighborhood? Okay. All right, good enough. And probably most of the rest of you have heard about it when it was going on. Okay, so in 2020, so at the same time that we're working with the Athena dataset, that is when the outbreak first came into Chittenden County and mainly into Colchester, where I live. And an important part of this story is that my significant other, Ken Mills, is a landscape architect, and our property has essentially been his art project for over 20 years. And what we saw happen out of nowhere were the trees defoliating before our eyes. But before that, it was caterpillars, like everywhere. They changed how everything looked, they changed how everything smelled, they changed how everything sounded. And it was all that we could talk about in our neighborhood. But we're also being threatened with these new thoughts that we hadn't had, is like we could lose all these trees, and Ken's project of over 20 years could be completely devastated, which is not just a personal thing in terms of an art project, but does have to do with how we survive economically in the world. So it was just extreme in all those ways. So what you're looking at here, I'm going to show you some pictures from it. So these are leaves that have fallen to the ground, and all those little things are caterpillar poop all around them. We're in June here, and we're looking up at trees that have these oak trees that have no leaves left on them. And here's a little, just to show you, this is after I started doing some collecting, and you can just see this is after once they've gotten pretty big, they move pretty quickly, and they eat a lot. So we also started to experience their rapid life cycle. So these are the female moths, and they've laid eggs. That's the yellow masses underneath them. And they die right on top of the eggs, like within a week, and start to decay. And here is one of the first forms that I found. And I looked at this, I sent it out to some friends and neighbors, and especially people who weren't experiencing it. I was like, this is what's happening here. And people responded. Like, it told a story, right? There's a language to this leaf. And I started getting really enamored with these leaves because of this. Every form was so incredible and so different and so intricate and almost looked deliberate. Does anyone want to take, what do you see there in that leaf? Does anyone see any form? I see, you see a very hungry caterpillar. Okay, because I see Pinocchio. Yeah, okay. Okay, and then just to add more to sort of the viscerality of everything that's happening is what you're seeing on the right there is those are caterpillars that have been infected by the fungus, which is their natural predator, that did not come out in 2020 because it was a drought that is believed to be a climate change-induced drought. So the fungus didn't go out, and that caused the explosion. But that's really how they die. And actually, it's really gruesome how the fungus kills the caterpillar. It's actually the most violent part of the whole story, but I'll spare you. But just to give you a sense of this stuff is just the viscerality and the form. So I'm going to play a... So anyone know what they're hearing? Munching? Pooping? Both. Yes, that's not rain. That is the sound of caterpillar poop falling through the trees, along with some debris and probably some munching. But so that's what it sounded like. So that leads me to the damaged leaf dataset. And so this is when I started collecting the leaves that were falling. Again, like the form, just form after form after form. These trees, and between the trees and the caterpillar collision, and then also, I think, speaking to the amazing generation that our plants and trees do in terms of how many leaves that they generate. So I'm using this word it's very easy to just generate, but you've been hearing it a lot, right? Generative art, generative AI. Well, this has given me appreciation for the generative trees and other plants. And so this collection has gone on for 2 years now. This is one of my studio assistants, Giovanna. So we had a whole process of pressing these leaves, cleaning these leaves, and taking care of them. Also, Sid Culbert, who is here today, has participated in this as well. And to the right there, yeah. And I think just being able to make this work too that was connecting to as local as my neighborhood has been very rewarding. So here are some of the leaves you're starting to see how they're pressed and been photographed here. And then that's more when they were in the pressing stage. Now they're photographed. And then now they've been edited, and I have 2 panels of these. We have about 800 of them on view in the Burlington City Arts Gallery, which I hope you'll join us for later. And I have about 5,000 total, so this is a multi-year project to get them all photographed. So there are 3 generations of leaves in this project, which I'm calling Generation 1, Generation 2, and Generation 3. So the Generation 1 is the ones that we were just looking at, which is where the caterpillars has gone in and started to eat the leaves. Generation 2 is when the trees, a healthy tree can generate a new set of leaves after it's been defoliated, which was something that many of us were not aware of. And so that leaf in the middle, that is an oak leaf. So you can see they're looking different than a traditional oak leaf. So we're talking red oak and white oak. And I'm going to show you some examples. And Generation 3 is where we're imagining the use of AI with a generation. But so these Generation 2 leaves, really when I talk to people, this is the thing that people get most amazed with, right? Is that the trees can produce a second set of leaves. And it was pretty miraculous. And it was very hopeful, right? In the sense of everything that we were going through and the loss that we had experienced and the fear of the trees, and then to see them produce this whole new set of leaves is just really incredible. And here are this is late in the fall when I was picking them up. So they were falling. So it's now a typical time where leaves would fall. But the leaves are looking different. They're a little smaller. They're not as symmetrical. They're curly. And these really stood out to me in the sense of the metaphor of climate change, that they literally look like flames to me, and even in terms of the coloring. And so we're going to move on a little bit here. So we have a little game that we do to engage people in this that I'd like to play with all of you, and it's called "What Do You See in the Leaf?" We did that a little bit earlier, but let's just do a little more here. Okay, so this is the same leaf, but it's turned 2 ways. Anyone? Dragon. All right, people see that? Dragon? Okay. Big bird. Seahorses. Anything else? Okay. Butterfly. Batman. Right, so there's this fun sort of Rorschach thing going on here, but it's what I've started to think of is really there's a pattern language that's starting to happen. I think even if sometimes people have looked at the way that some of them, that the leaves are organized, and they see patterns and that were unintentional that come through, that weren't intentional from my end, but then people start to see them. Oh, what about this one? T-Rex? What else? Just T-Rex? Godzilla? Okay. Okay, so we'll look a little more at generation 2 now. So that was the generation 1. Okay, so here are more of those generation 2 leaves I was telling you about, where we start to get the different kinds of forms, the more asymmetrical, a little bit curlier, certainly smaller. And what you're looking at in terms of from the bottom up, in terms of the oak trees there, so that's from defoliation to refoliation. And here's a more close-up of that. All right, so now I'm going to move into how we've been thinking about the generation 3 here. So this is about thinking about how to use AI. And so these questions have surfaced, and I'll read them off to you. So it's like, can machines repair the damaged leaves? Can artificial intelligence and other advanced technologies fix climate change at the local level? So I fortunately have Donna Rizzo to help me work through these. And so we're in a conversation right now. So obviously there's something that's a little bit ridiculous about these questions, but I think that what is ridiculous about them is an extremely important thing for us to assess in terms of how we're going to use AI and what it can and can't do. And so here, this is an example of this was done with the 800 images that are on view at BCA in terms of one of the generative GANs that we've been talking about in terms of feeding it a data set and then seeing it's going to predict the 801st leaf might look like if there was another leaf in it, and it's doing a drawing. So it's essentially identifying the patterns in the data set I sent, and it's making another one. And this one has been etched on a silicon wafer. So that was just some play, or some early play with the AI. But where it's going in those questions I was just telling you about is that I've become really interested in even digging deeper into the form of the leaves. So you have a leaf. What you're looking at here was a Gen 2 leaf, but also what's next to that is a machined leaf. And so this is using a CNC and engraving into the aluminum, but the lines here are based on the machine's efficiency of getting through the shape. So this comparison of the natural patterning of the leaf and formal quality of the leaf with how a machine interprets a leaf is very interesting to me in terms of the lines. And so future work is going to be looking and putting these lines in contrast with each other. So this is a body of work that I've just begun to work on. And we're also getting through working again with AI and doing some basic things and working with GANs, getting just some really interesting ways of grouping the leaves together. This is actually something one of my undergrad students, Jason Stillerman, has pulled out, but just like trying to this juxtaposition of the natural world and the machine world. And just the metaphors too of the cocoons. So these are the spongy moth caterpillars and cocoons coming out as a female moth. But that idea of that black box, and then thinking about the black box of the models, but also the computers. So that's another part of this new body of work, just bringing these together. And that pretty much wraps up where things are. But I think if I was, my sort of big thing here is I think that there's a lot that artists can do by really starting with the data set. And there's a bunch of students here in one of my classes who are doing that exact same thing. Now you know why we had that assignment. But also I just really invite you to be a part of this project in any way, particularly if any of you are are dealing with a spongy moth and looking for some respite from that. I'd love to chat with you. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jen. That was awesome. Our next presenter, Mauro Martino, is the principal research and scientist at the MIT IBM Watson AI Lab, Cambridge, Massachusetts, where he founded and directs the Visual Artificial Intelligence Lab. He was formerly a professor at Northeastern University in Boston and a research affiliate with the Sensible City Lab at MIT. And his lyrical Strolling Cities project was exhibited at the Italian Pavilion at the 2021 Venice Biennale, and I simply can't get enough of your gorgeous data visualizations.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Burlington is so beautiful, I think you will see me around for a few months. So there are 4 points in this presentation, and I try to introduce this exercise in style that is the title of the project in exhibition. So a very fast introduction of myself. Essentially, I work in the area of database for many years. This is probably one of my most famous work made with Laszlo Barabasi. It was a way to celebrate 150 years of nature. So it was kind of a gift that we give to nature for this incredible work that they did at many years. And there is a strong effort in the community to enter always in this conference, NeurIPS. In case you don't know, probably is the main conference in the field of neural network. And this is a landing page of NeurIPS of 3 years ago. They asked us, to my team, to prepare this overview of the landscape. So essentially it was I don't know, this word sounds esoteric for some of you, but it's like a UMAP of all the paper that come from. Essentially what this means, if 2 dots are very close. Oh, if 2 dots are very close, this means 2 papers are very similar. So, and then we can start to create some clusterization, and you can see some main field that emerge. But when we are looking, the dynamic of this map is very clear that there are some area, some new area, where there's still a lot of work to do, and some very old area in the south of this universe that are very stable. Essentially, we can say is an old approach to artificial intelligence. Probably my focus is more in this orange label that you can see there, and many of the people that work with me are working in this field. So I would really like to zoom in and to give you this perception that every time we are talking about artificial intelligence, is always about model, evolution of model, that a big community of thousands of people around the world are building. So it's never a one company, it's never a one brand, it's always a community. And inside of this constellation of paper, there are a few papers that are really important for me, for the way that I build and develop my understanding of the eye. So I started to work in this field from 2012 in this very interesting area. So, and there are many of these words that you know very well. Generative adversarial network, many people talk about that today. And variational autoencoder, energy-based model. This is one of the core topics of my lab. Try to transform everything in an energy-based model. And but probably today the protagonist of this revolution is the diffusion model. So it's no one company, it's the diffusion model. And I have a very complicated story with so many protagonists that build slowly this incredible. If there is one protagonist that I want to say thank you is Homer, Professor Homer from Munich University. They have this crazy, beautiful invention last year to link a diffusion model with a latent space. And this was really a revolution for everybody. And now everybody are using this idea, everybody, all the company around the world. And so the idea, I think you see many times this type of graph, but I think it's very important to understand that to become so high quality, to create this strong diversity in a strong variety of output, is necessary to use this type of model. Because when you use it in GAN, essentially there is some clusterization during the learning process. It's very hard to maintain stable the learning. And these models are really, really rich in terms of expressiveness. So essentially, you can obtain a lot of variety of new output from a very low amount of training data. And the concept is very simple. Essentially, you destroy your dataset. Yes, you destroy your dataset by introducing noise in the dataset. More and more noise. And what the model has to learn, how to make a reinterpretation from a noise to the picture, because it was learning how to link a picture at time t1 to the picture that is more noisy at time to t2, and then it can do the opposite. So go for noise. Essentially, and this is the most interesting part for me, is when you have two random vector that express just noise. They can be related thanks to another model, his name is Clip, that is made by OpenAI, so thank you for OpenAI for Clip. And essentially you can translate this random vector to a very clear picture. And then you can see you introduce more and more noise step by step. This Gaussian noise can be interesting to explore, because you can slowly move from Z1 to Z2, and in any step you can make this denoising process. So essentially what you can build is a video. And a video that just is translation between one picture to another, or can be more sophisticated. And of course depend from the level of sophistication from your lab. Essentially, all this video that you're looking now, 1 second. They are coming, voila. They look similar, but they're very different in terms of quality. You can see there are some flickery in video A, less flicker in the video B, and then there is not really a clear loop in the video C. Essentially, the effort in terms of math that the artists need to study, need to apply, is how to move in this latent space, in this pixel space, in a way to obtain the visual effect that you're looking for. Now, this was the preview of this speech, and this was one of the last exhibition that was ending in October in Milan. It was a personal exhibition about how to create this movie by using text input or audio input or body movement input. And you can see there is a possibility to generate a picture that look fake picture, in the sense they look similar to a dataset that exists, like the CryptoPunk. You can produce CryptoPunk with this technique, or you can produce a very new and very diverse type of image, like you see during all the day. Now, let's think about this emerging behavior that exists in this actual paradigm where we are living today. So essentially, when we're using a model, a large language model, what we want is to have a prediction of the next word. And it's a very simple task. It is very fascinating, because it's a very simple request. Please, model, tell me what would be the next word. So I have the quick brown fox, and then what could be the next word? And it's a simple request. So there is a tokenization, so you divide every single word in this phrase, and then there is process. You convert all the token into embeddings, and then you feed to the large language model. So you have a probability of what could be the right word to introduce after this phrase. And then, of course, you select one, and the result is, for example, jumps. So the quick brown fox jumps. And looks, it sounds very ridiculous simple, this effort. But what happens if we try to predict the next word, and the next simultaneously? So thanks for this. I don't want to say that the idea, so stupid idea, makes the revolution and make the general AI available to us in a few years. I want to say that this simple idea maybe could be a key point in our revolution, because there are the diversity of training data is one of the big factors that we have today. So there are large and very different type. If you think about, we train a large language model with text and with code. A lot of code, and the model is merging these two knowledge together. So it understands some logic from the code, and then you can apply this logic to the way to build a phrase. But then there is this incredible architecture, thanks to Google, the transformer. So you can see it's really a chorality of company and group of people that work in this area. Then they created this architecture that can give us really a high level of abstraction. Essentially can really figure out not just the next, but the next word to introduce in the phrase. And then Of course, the number of parameters can be very large today, thanks from the cost and the performance of the GPU in the market. And thanks to NVIDIA for that. Now, the question that you have always is, we're in front of a general intelligence. And people tell you no, or they tell you yes. In reality, nobody knows. But we have a perception, me and many of my colleagues, that maybe we are at the beginning. So from this simple rule, tell me what is the next word, we have an emerging, thanks for this whole incredible number of parameters, of something more interesting. So, of course, the phrase can be more interesting and complicated, and the system can predict the word, so it's learning to complete a more interesting phrase. But then we can introduce more sophisticated starting point and ask to complete a large amount of this text, not just the next one, and so on, and so on, and so on, until the point that maybe at this moment, the version 4 of ChatGPT is able to have a Latin representation of the word. We don't know, nobody knows, because we're talking about a trillion of parameters. So it's a Latin space that is so big that no one human scientist, not even Einstein, nobody can really understand what's going on there. And now ChatGPT 5, or maybe another company, will introduce what is after 100 trillion? I don't know. Essentially, increase the capability of this model. Now, if the model have a representation of the word, this is the first stage of our AI. So maybe by just asking this simple rule, predict the next word, we activate something bigger. And if you think about, sounds very meaningful, because can a human person writing a code able to produce an artificial intelligence system that is better of him? I don't think so. What we can do is building a simple rule and making it running like our human brain. There is just electricity that moves from neuron to another. Just sounds simple, almost simple biological rule, but then something magic happens. So maybe we find one of these magic rules, and now we are growing maybe something that will be hyperhuman. It will be the first. So nobody knows, so everybody are scared. Really, if you want to be scared, be now, because nobody really knows what's going on with all this multidimensional space. So at the moment, the theory is very simple. You know, the theory of singularity is if I build a computer that is able to write the code better than me, and me, I'm not really good, but better of the best coder in the planet, so hyperhuman coder, then I can ask the code to improve his code forever until it becomes so good, this code, and so good the algorithm. And you have the goal to make him more smart, whatever smart will be, what is the clear goal of this improving, but then we are very close to this direction because we saw incredible update in a way to writing code from ChatGPT 3 to ChatGPT 4. Incredible. If you compare the quality of the code that comes from the 3, able to just to ingest 20 lines of code, something like that, now is able to ingest 500 lines of code. And then the next will be able to ingest 2 billion, 2 million, who knows? So we are almost there. Me, not really me, not really you, someone is building something great for us. Maybe I will be part of this big revolution, I don't know. Anyway, let's back to something more pragmatic. Just this to give you the feeling that I have like in my dimension of an artist. I live in a multi-dimension too. Sometimes I'm a scientist, sometimes I'm an artist, but this is the cultural mood that I have. And then there is a more prosaic aspect. Okay, these things become so smart, so when it's time to create art, what can I do? Just prompting looks like an insult for an artist. I will be a prompter. Everybody will become a prompter. Do you want to be a journalist prompter? I don't know. Looks like that is not our life, is something that we don't looking for. But in your picture, you know, we can, to follow the same example of the fox, learn step by step how to make from the system whatever we want. And of course, we can ask ChatGPT-4 to build the prompt for us. So don't worry, you will not make the prompt either. we are not a prompt. We are not a prompt. We will never be so good and so fast to build so good prompt like the system. So I don't know what will be our job. For sure, not the prompter. Forget it. I know you was dreaming about that. I know. Forget it. So when we're prompting area of, when our goal is to build a nice picture, a nice visualization, a nice video, of course we need to be very careful about what we're asking for. Try to be original. And I try to use my face, just to be egocentric today, to challenge the system to go in the direction of Alice Neal. I say in the right way? I don't know. Alice Neal? No, I think so. And you know, why I use an author, a so famous author, to give the main push to the system to draw my face? Because nothing works so well like a name of an artist to give a clear artistic direction to the system. You can write so many things, but if you just add Alice Neal, you go there quickly, fast, and the quality is great. And then Edward Munch, and you can see I become more sad, depressed. It's not really me, but I was smiling in all the collection of pictures, was from Christmas, and yeah, it make me sad. It's the power of this artist. Shield, I look like a pervert guy now, but it's not me, I guarantee you. It's not me. And Klimt, now it looks like I'm the beautiful person that I'm not, but you know, probably it's the effect of all this gold. You know, some spirit, some idea, some vision, some time that come from the artist will go immediately to representation of yourself. Now, I never in my life have this mustache, but I love it. Probably I will do it. I discovered yesterday that, I don't know, it looks very French. I don't know if for you it's a good thing. So I'm Italian, it's not so good, but today is a very good thing. So, and then, of course, maybe I'm trans, I don't know, no, I'm not, but in a sense, it tries obviously to move in a direction where there is an abundance of collection of women painting from these artists. So, and there are so many repetitions of the same paint, you know, that the system tried to move my face in that direction. Probably because there is a lot painting that, that go in that direction in the training data. So, I think it's a fascinating discover something about you, your friend, by using all this culture that comes just from one name. Can be so powerful, history of art, but just using one name to rebrand with the talent of that artist, everything in real time. We can do it in real time. You can have a Google Glass and see all the planet with the eyes of Munch. I will give you Munch because you deserve it. No. I don't know. This will be a very bad, probably, planet, but Lucian Freud is maybe a good choice too. But you can identify the artists that really match your spirit, your humor, your mood, and see the world in a way that you dream, in a way that you wish. And of course, Chagall could be very psychedelic, and Paul Klee. And now let's just see Paul Klee, because I use Paul Klee like a form of inspiration to transform the world around to me. And you can see this video in the exhibition. So let's watch together for 1 minute this piece that you can find in the exhibition, and then let's talk about that.
Comédie. Acte premier, scène 1. Sur la plateforme arrière d'un autobus S, un jour vers midi.
Volume.
Le receveur. La monnaie, s'il vous plaît. Des voyageurs lui passent la monnaie. Scène 2. L'autobus s'arrête. Le receveur. Laissons descendre, priorité, une priorité, c'est complet, drelin, drelin, drelin. Acte second. Scène 1. Même décor. Premier voyageur. Jeune, long cou, une tresse autour du chapeau. On dirait, monsieur, que vous le faites exprès de me marcher sur les pieds chaque fois qu'il passe des gens. Second voyageur hausse les épaules. Scène 2. Un troisième voyageur descend. Premier voyageur, s'adressant au public. « Chouette, une place libre, j'y cours !» Il se précipite dessus et l'occupe. Acte 3e. Scène 1. La cour de Rome. Un jeune élégant. Au premier voyageur, maintenant piéton. L'échancrure de ton pardessus est trop large. Tu devrais la fermer un peu en faisant remonter le bouton du haut. Scène 2. À bord d'un autobus S, passant devant la cour de Rome. Quatrième voyageur. Tiens, le type qui se trouvait tout à l'heure avec moi dans l'autobus et qui s'engueulait avec un bonhomme. Curieuse rencontre. J'en ferai une comédie en 3 actes et en prose.
I know some of you is dreaming to go around with this visual effect. Maybe on Saturday night. So, yeah, okay, we can push our imagination to really maybe, I know Rockwell is from Vermont, you know? So we can maybe understand how easy it could be for us using this technology to just commemorate or just give us some new experience to the student to learn art. And of course, Steinberg is an amazing illustrator. You can use any type of artist. And you can be the artist too, in the sense that the system needs just 20 pictures from you draw to learn how to draw like you. And of course, if you give more, it's better, but 20 is more than enough. And I use 20 for this, so 20 is more. So what is the point that I don't really like from corporation? Corporation introduced this problem that give us the idea of what is right, what is not. And essentially, they censor the capability of an artist to express himself. Like, there is no way to make nude people in some of the system. Can you believe an artist that cannot make naked people? What's the meaning? It's an offense. Of course, I come from Italy. I know there is a lot of debate about some of our sculpture in the United States. But I think just the David from Florence. No, you know this story. No. But the David is not a David. It's not a person. He represents Florence. Why have to be naked? Because it's an honest city. It's an honest city that is proud of itself. Are so proud they cannot mask anything. And this simple concept that was very welcome 500 years ago become a little bit of trouble, especially with this corporation today. They introduce this sense of, I don't know, we are in the Middle Age again. They tell us what we can do, what we cannot do. It's crazy. We cannot express ourselves. So they want to be polite. They don't want to make fake news. They find good reason, of course, to propose the technology this way, but I'm always for the side of freedom. So I'm always for delivering everything is available to everybody. Okay, ChatGPT is available. Give to everybody. Open the code. Give everything. We can play with. We can make better and faster. Why everything is so a secret? And why we got to play just with your rule? Is everything that comes from any technology in the world today, especially in AI, comes from the effort of thousands of persons, especially persons that come from university, that take money from government. So I think everything has to be open. Anyway, this was my link to the big problem that artists have today when they want to play with this technology. Maybe they don't have the expertise to write code for itself and need to use this app available online. But the app available online, they are not really your friend today. They make too many censorship in what you can write. Now, just 1 minute, and then I close my speech. Essentially, I want to give you this introduction about this genius, Quinault. Are you aware about this book, Exercise in Style of Quinault? Was the first attempt to essentially produce 99 stories. Each of these stories just say the same very ridiculous anecdote. Essentially, a man witnessed a minor disagreement in a bus, and later see one of the participants in this disagreement again in another street. It's nothing, it's something that you can experience every day. But the story is so trivial because the important point of this book is the capability of the author to use a different narrative, different tone, different linguistic form to give the impression that you're reading something different. Each single story is the same story, but it looks like 99 type of story. So I was thinking, I was feeling, I want to this challenge too. I will make Mauro Martino's exercise of style by using, of course, a different type of technology. Transform each story from Kino in a video. And because the story is always the same, but the word the author is using always different, the richness from the rhetoric expression make a very different the output, very, very different. So I don't play with the text. I use plain the text from the book I put there to see what happened. And of course, I play with this type of aesthetic style because, of course, there is no aesthetic style in the book. So you can understand there is not just the effort to have different type of style. These are just frames from different type of video. You can see some of the video in the exhibition later. But then, of course, the point is to introduce a different language, like a 3D pixel language, or this kind of perspective, camera angle is very different because you can manipulate the angle of the camera and many other things, like you know probably by play with DALI and many other tools, my journey, stable diffusion and many other. So, and at the end, I think the exercise of style was very exhausting. Because it was very tough. But I learned how to play with camera, with light, with style in a way that was probably not possible before. So I imposed to myself this 99 video. Then, of course, I give for the exhibition 7 of this video. The other video will be released in NFT almost for free, honestly, for free. Honestly, you'll pay just for the poster that you receive at home, essentially. But at the end, I think this exercise was very exhausting, and I was very happy to accept this challenge from, essentially it was coming from you. You proposed me make something new for this exhibition. I did it. And if you want to know more, if you have any question, I think we have 2 minutes for a few questions, and otherwise, just write to me. I'm always available for any conversation. Thank you.
So we have time for just a couple questions, and you can ask questions for either Mauro or for Jenn. So questions.
Where is Jenn?
There's Jenn. Yes.
I have a question for Jenn. So, like, looking at the CNC picture towards the end, where it had like sort of the way a CNC machine works creates like a lot of vertical lines. I was wondering, like, have you started experimenting with like fractals and asking like the AI to iterate on different kinds of fractals, because then it's mirroring the way that the leaf grows on the tree?
Yeah, that's a really great idea. One of the things that what I'm interested in is sort of those lines that you were seeing in the other versus the sort of the veining pattern of the leaves is actually that contrast, and thinking of them as different kinds of efficiencies, right? Because one is the tool path, which is efficient in its own right of what the machine wants, and then the other is, you know, to deliver nutrients to the trees and the leaves, and that conflict and contrast is really interesting to me. But I love the fractal idea too.
This question's for Mauro. I was curious because you said it was an exhausting process, exercises and style, and I think so much of artwork is sort of an illusion. You see it in a gallery, it's finished, it's beautiful. Could you kind of share a little bit about even just what it took to create one of those 7 vignettes? Like, I mean,
Well, the technology that I'm using is not available in a sense. There is no code that you can take online. So it's essentially push the system to have a very clean pan movement. Essentially, to simplify, is a technology to move the camera in this latent space from stable diffusion. So zoom in, zoom out. Something is available, but it's not good enough. So you need to work a lot to make the system really react in the way that you want. Then, of course, the output is not one. This is the problem when you interact with the machine. You agree? In a sense, the most difficult time is to decide what I pick, what the right seed for my work. And of course, when you work professionally, you don't use tool. Obviously, you run your Python code and you build an automatic hundred of phrase that can be the right one with different style. And then for each phrase, you have 1,000 output, and then you need to pick a new good one. So essentially, you can make your life miserable in the way that you want. So you can ask 10,000 pictures for each phrase, and then you stay 2 weeks to watch all the pictures. So of course, at the beginning, you do that. I don't know if you have the same experience. When you start, you're always full of energy, and you say, oh, I make 1,000 phrase for this phrase, all the variation. I try all the outro, I try all the style, and then I mix. I create, thanks for many collaborators that we work, but in this year, at some point, you can have a matrix, where is a phrase, and there are different type of light, different type of outro, different type of everything, different type of shadow, and then the matrix system play all the possible combination. And then, of course, you have 2 million pictures you will never be watching your life, but you're proud of that, so you have there. And then you count about luckiness. You open this 2 million picture, and you feel lucky to watch probably 200 and say, okay, this is the best. And then you erase everything. So, okay, it's not very good for environment, but I'm improving my method.
Yeah, actually, we had a similar experience too, because the show that we did at UVM with the Athena data set, actually we had so much information. When we did our first exploration, we didn't have any methods for how to organize the output, and essentially had to redo it once it got to a point where we were going to show the work so that I could trace where it came back from, because there was just so much. But for all the reasons that you were just saying, yeah, there's just, you have to start making choices. The choices become extremely important that you make, and that, I think, when you're, it's essentially like being a curator of the work that's come out of the GAN or whatever you're using. I don't know if you that word curator works for you or not.
Yes, but if I had to curate millions of works, I think I would design.
Yeah.
Well,
It's a mystery, because if you don't work in this world, it's not apparent. Like, it's just, I love to hear about it.
but it's not so simple. Can I add another layer of complexity?
Please.
So I just told you at the beginning, but it's many years I work in this area. So I started to make a video like 2 years ago with a stable diffusion. We can, of course, from the beginning. You start to build a model that can pick the picture for you, obviously. So essentially, you need to build your personal curator. This is really have your flavor, you test. So in the way you're doing is like classify output that you really love, output you really don't like, and then slowly, but over the time, the system can really always pick the right picture for you. And of course, you can introduce some serendipity in a way to be always consistent with this direction. And of course, it's growing with you, so you change opinion and style, and the system will change opinion and style. But this is one of the key points. Each artist has his personal curator that is a digital, because you want to preserve a richness of the output, so you want to produce a lot of this output, and then have another algorithm that pick the best for you. Because we don't know what is in latent space. We don't have a clear compass where to go. So at the moment, the only help is just to have your personal digital curator. Well, every time you talk with a digital artist in this field, there are two persons, the artist and the digital curator close to him. So now you know.
Yeah, and I think there's still potentially something you could lose when you're, as the human artist who's not making that final decision. Don't you think? I mean, because it's, I understand, like, where do we automate efficiency, and when are we actually losing something when we automate efficiency?
Well, obviously, when you build a project, it's your project, your idea, don't come from anybody. Yes, of course, from tomorrow, from ChatGPT 5 will come everything. So if you won't become artist now, because then it will be too late. The brand is...
Thank you on that note. Thank you so much. We're going to take about a 10-minute break, and then we're going to be back for Josh Bongard.
Really nice to meet you.